The council chamber of Avarice Prime, the most advanced and feared intergalactic coalition in the known universe, was in chaos. Representatives from the 9 ruling species stood in tense debate, their voices rising like thunderclaps in the cavernous room. The topic? Humanity. The species that had barely managed to leave their solar system had somehow resisted the Council's attempts at subjugation for over a decade. To the Avarians, it was a blemish on their record. To the ruthless Eltherians, it was an insult. And to the war-hardened Krextau, it was outright laughable. "This ends today," growled Commander Voller of the Krextau, his exoskeleton gleaming under the chamber lights. "We should simply vaporize their miserable blue rock and be done with it." "That would be short-sighted," interjected Ambassador Liren of the Elvithar, her voice smooth and calculating. Her pale, translucent features glimmered faintly as she leaned forward. "There's something about these humans. Their defiance defies logic. Their resourcefulness defies reason. We must study them further." A hush fell over the chamber as Supreme Arbiter Axer, the towering, insectoid ruler of the council, raised one clawed appendage. His multifaceted eyes scanned the room. "We convened here to determine how to deal with this species once and for all, not to argue over methods. Now!" But the Arbiter's command was interrupted by something so out of place, so baffling, that the entire chamber fell silent. The doors to the council chamber hissed open, revealing the imposing figure of Captain Rael Vega, humanity's representative. He was flanked by 2 guards, their plasma rifles aimed at his back, but Rael's smirk suggested he wasn't the least bit concerned. "Ladies, gentlemen, and whatever you all are," Rael said, his voice dripping with mock politeness, "I thought I'd bring a little peace offering. A taste of Earth, if you will." The guards shoved him forward, but Rael calmly placed a small metal container on the central table of the chamber. The scent hit the council before anyone could speak. A warm, rich, intoxicating aroma that seemed to slither into every corner of the room. "What is that?" hissed General Thrax of his Eltherians, his forked tongue flicking nervously. Rael grinned, his emerald eyes gleaming with mischief. "Brownies. A simple Earth dessert. Cocoa, sugar, butter, and a little bit of love." The aroma was having an unexpected effect. The Krextau warriors, who had once boasted of surviving the vacuum of space unaided, were shifting uncomfortably in their seats, their clawed hands twitching. Ambassador Liren's ever-composed expression faltered as her eyes flicked toward the container. Even the Supreme Arbiter leaned slightly forward, his antennae twitching in confusion. "Do you honestly think this little stunt will change anything, human?" spat Voller. Rael stepped closer to the table, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial tone. "Oh, I don't just think it'll change things. I know it will. Because these aren't just brownies, Voller. They're proof of something none of you understand about humanity." "And what is that, human?" Arbiter Axer's voice was low, dangerous. Rael's grin widened. "That the simplest things we create carry the weight of everything we are. Our history, our ingenuity, our ability to turn nothing into something extraordinary. These brownies? They're the first step in your surrender." The room erupted in furious chatter. "This is absurd," roared General Thrax. "He's stalling. Guards, remove him immediately." But before the guards could act, Liren held up her hand. "Wait." Her pale fingers reached out, hesitating only a moment before she lifted one of the brownies from the container. The room fell silent again as she examined it, her translucent skin catching the light. "Ambassador, don't," Voller began, but Liren ignored him. She took a delicate bite, her pupils dilated, her mouth opened slightly as if to speak, but no words came out. The room watched in stunned silence as she placed the remaining brownie down and smiled. A genuine, wide smile that none had ever seen from the normally cold and calculating Elvithar. "Well, what is this feeling?" Liren whispered, almost to herself. "It's warmth, nostalgia, as if I'm home." The room erupted once again, but this time in chaos of a different kind. Council members scrambled toward the container, their dignified facades collapsing into primal hunger. Voller and Thrax bellowed protests, but even the Supreme Arbiter seemed unable to resist the pull of the brownies. Rael stood back, arms crossed, watching the chaos with a smirk. "And that," he murmured to himself, "is the power of humanity." But his satisfaction was short-lived. A sharp, metallic clang rang out as Voller slammed his claws onto the table, his eyes burning with rage. "You think this changes anything, human?" Voller snarled, towering over Rail. "Your tricks may sway the weak-willed, but we Krextau will never surrender to something as pathetic as your food." Rail smirked and waver. He leaned in, his voice barely a whisper. "Then maybe you should try one, Voller. Or are you afraid of what it might do to you?" The challenge hung in the air like a drawn blade. Voller's claws scraped against the polished table as he loomed over Rail Vega, his mandibles clicking in frustration. The scent of the brownies filled the chamber like a heavy fog, making even the stoic Krextau warriors behind him shift uncomfortably. The other council members had lost any semblance of decorum, some even licking crumbs off their elongated fingers or talons, their previously regal postures forgotten. "Afraid?" Voller spat, his voice reverberating off the chamber walls. "The Krextau fear nothing, human. Not your weapons, not your defiance, and certainly not your confectionery filth." Rail raised an eyebrow, the corners of his mouth quirking upward. "Is that right? Well, Voller, I guess the question is, are you brave enough to prove it?" The chamber went silent, every council member turning their gaze toward Voller. Even Arbiter Axer, whose usual air of authority had been replaced by a subtle twitch of his antennae, seemed intrigued. The challenge wasn't just about the brownies anymore, it was a matter of pride. Voller's mandibles clicked furiously as he considered the implications. To refuse would make him appear weak in front of the entire council. To accept, however, he couldn't quite explain the uneasy feeling gnawing at his core. "Fine," Voller growled, snatching one of the brownies with a clawed hand. "I'll prove to you how meaningless your pathetic human creations truly are." The chamber held its collective breath as Voller examined the small, unassuming square of dessert. It seemed so insignificant, so harmless, and yet, the way it had unraveled the council was undeniable. He brought the brownie to his mouth and took a bite. For a moment, nothing happened. Voller chewed slowly, his expression unreadable as his jagged teeth ground the brownie into smaller bits. The room waited in agonizing silence, every member of the council frozen in anticipation. Then, Voller's claws trembled, his glowing yellow eyes widened, his mandibles quivering as if he was struggling to contain something. He staggered backward, nearly losing his balance as a low, guttural sound escaped him. "Voller," one of his warriors asked nervously, stepping forward. "Are you?" Silence. Voller barked, though his voice cracked mid-command. His breathing became labored as he clutched the edge of the table for support. But Rail knew what was happening. He had seen this before. The human culinary weapon was working its magic. "It's not just a dessert, is it?" Rail said, his voice calm yet sharp as he stepped closer. "You feel it now, don't you? The rush of endorphins, the inexplicable comfort. It's like a childhood memory you've never had, a taste of hope you didn't know you needed." That's the thing about humans, Voller. Even our simplest creations are infused with everything we are, our creativity, our perseverance, and, most importantly, our ability to connect. "No," Voller growled, his voice trembling. This is a trick, some kind of human mind control." Rail chuckled softly. "No tricks, no tech, no mind control. Just sugar, cocoa, and a pinch of salt. Funny, isn't it? You face plasma cannons and gravitational weapons. But what's breaking you is a dessert made in someone's kitchen." The chamber erupted into murmurs once again. The other council members, many still savoring their brownies, exchanged uneasy glances. Even the staunchest skeptics couldn't deny the impact of what had just happened. But Voller wasn't ready to concede. With a roar of defiance, he slammed his fist onto the table, shattering the edge. "This changes nothing. You think we'll surrender because of this? You underestimate the resolve of the council. Human. Your food will not save you." Rail didn't flinch, even as shards of the table scattered near his boots. He met Voller's gaze with unshakable confidence. "Oh, I'm not asking you to surrender because of the brownies. They're just a taste of what's coming." Voller snarled. "What are you talking about?" Rail leaned in, his voice low, but sharp enough to cut through the tension. "Humanity has a knack for turning the mundane into the extraordinary. You've only tasted a fraction of what we're capable of. Imagine what would happen if we decided to weaponize flavor, to infiltrate your worlds with sensations you can't control. Your warriors won't fight. They'll be too busy craving the next bite. Your leaders won't lead. They'll be arguing over who gets the last piece. The room went deathly silent. The implications of Rael's words settled over the council like a storm cloud. "That's impossible," muttered Ambassador Lyran, though her voice carried more fear than certainty. "No species could wield something so intangible as a weapon." "Can't we?" Rael countered, his grin widening. "You've already seen the effects. And this was just the first batch. Imagine what we could do with time, resources, and creativity." Voller growled, but the fear in his eyes was unmistakable. For the first time in the history of the council, the unshakable Krextau commander looked unsure of himself. Rael turned to the rest of the council, his voice booming with confidence. "You've underestimated humanity from the start. You saw us as primitive, insignificant. But what you failed to realize is that our greatest strength isn't our technology or our weapons. It's our ability to adapt, to innovate, and to surprise. So go ahead, keep underestimating us. But don't say I didn't warn you when the next battle is fought not with plasma rifles, but with pastries." The council members exchanged uneasy glances, the seeds of doubt firmly planted. Arbiter Axer's antennae twitched as he regarded Rael with something approaching respect. But Voller wasn't ready to back down. "Not yet. This changes nothing," he repeated, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. "The council will crush your pathetic species, brownies or no brownies." Rael simply smiled, stepping back toward the chamber doors. "We'll see about that. Enjoy the dessert, folks. You'll be seeing a lot more of it soon." As the doors hissed shut behind him, the chamber erupted into a cacophony of arguments, accusations, and frantic whispers. Rael Vega's words, and his brownies, had left a mark that no one in the council could ignore. But Rael knew this was only the beginning. Back aboard the Pathfinder, Rael Vega stood in the galley, watching Chef Minna as she meticulously stirred a pot of molten chocolate. The aroma filled the room, even richer than before. This batch wasn't just for demonstration, it was preparation for war. Minna wiped her brow with a flour-dusted hand, her voice steady despite the weight of their mission. "You think they bought it, Rael?" The council might argue endlessly, but Voller, he's a different beast. Literally. Rael leaned against the counter, arms crossed. Voller's pride won't let him back down easily. But the council? They've tasted what we can do. They'll never look at us the same way again. All it takes is one crack in the armor, Minna. The Krextau may shout the loudest, but when the rest of the council starts questioning them. Questioning? Minna interrupted with a sharp laugh. "Rael, they were practically drooling on their robes back there. Did you see that one ambassador? The green one with the 6 eyes. Ambassador Lyran," Rael said with a smirk. "She's from the Torvellan Republic. Not the type to show weakness, but you saw what happened. She ate 3 brownies and still asked for the recipe." Minna grinned, sliding the pot off the burner. "Maybe I should have told her it's classified." Before Rael could respond, the comm panel on the wall crackled to life, cutting through their banter. "Commander Vega, incoming transmission from the Krextau flagship," a crisp voice announced. Rael's smirk faded. He straightened, glancing at Minna. "Here we go." The galley lights dimmed as a holographic display flickered to life, projecting the formidable visage of Voller. His mandibles twitched with barely contained fury, and his clawed hands gripped the edges of a Krextau war table. Behind him, the crew of his flagship moved with frenetic energy, as though preparing for something drastic. "Human," Voller snarled, his voice crackling with suppressed rage. "Your insolence knows no bounds. Do you think you can humiliate the Krextau in front of the entire Galactic Council and walk away unscathed?" Rael tilted his head, his expression unreadable. "Humiliate? Oh, Voller, I didn't mean to humiliate you. If anything, I just wanted to share a taste of humanity with you." "You mock us," Voller roared, slamming his fist against the table. The sound reverberated through the hologram, making Minna flinch slightly. "This isn't war. It's a farce. A desperate attempt to cling to relevance in a galaxy that has outgrown you." Rael stepped closer to the hologram, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "Desperate? Voller, Let me tell you something about humans. Desperation is where we thrive. When our backs are against the wall, that's when we're at our best. You think this is a joke? That the brownies were some kind of prank? Let me assure you, they're only the beginning. Minna stepped forward, holding a tray of fresh brownies. She smiled sweetly, though her words carried an edge. Care to try the next batch, Commander Voller? I made them especially for you. A little less sugar, a little more spice. Something tells me you'd appreciate the kick. Voller glared at her, his mandibles clicking in frustration. You dare. Rail cut him off, his voice rising to match the Krextau commander's fury. You don't get it, do you? This isn't just about food. It's about what it represents. Humans take the ordinary and turn it into the extraordinary. We create things that unite, things that inspire. And yes, things that terrify. You saw it back in the council chamber. Your allies, the ones you count on to support your war against Earth, they're already questioning their loyalty. You think that's going to stop? The tension in the room was palpable as Voller's hologram flickered slightly, his expression shifting from rage to something more uncertain. Rail pressed on, his tone sharp as a blade. Go ahead, déclarez-moi. Bring your fleets. But you won't just be fighting humans. You'll be fighting everything we've ever created. Every flavor, every sensation, every idea. We'll turn your soldiers into addicts, your generals into diplomats, and your war into a joke. Because that's what we do, Voller. We take your expectations and shatter them. For a long moment, Voller said nothing. The only sound was the faint hum of the hologram. Then his mandibles twitched, and he leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. You think your little tricks will save you, a human? You think the council will side with you over us? We are the Krextau. We have crushed empires, silenced rebellions, and brought entire worlds to their knees. You are nothing but an inconvenience. And when this is over, I will personally see to it that Earth is reduced to ashes. Rail smiled faintly, but there was no humor in it. Funny, I was about to say the same thing about your flagship. Oh, and Voller? You might want to check your comm logs. I think some of your crew has been sharing our recipes. Voller's eyes widened in shock as the hologram abruptly cut out. Minna raised an eyebrow. That was bold. You sure he won't just blow us out of the sky? Rail exhaled slowly, turning back to her. He'll try, but he's too paranoid now. He'll second-guess every decision, wondering who among his crew might be compromised. That's the beauty of humanity, Minna. We don't just fight with weapons. We fight with ideas. Minna smiled, handing him a brownie. Well, here's to the sweetest victory. Let's hope it works. But even as they shared a quiet moment of triumph, the ship's alarms blared to life, signaling an incoming fleet. The Krextau weren't backing down yet. The Pathfinder jolted under the impact of a low-power energy blast as the Krextau fleet loomed ominously in the viewport. Dozens of their wedge-shaped ships hovered in an intimidating formation, bristling with weapons. The warning lights in the Pathfinder's bridge bathed Rail and his crew in an eerie red glow. Commander, they've locked weapons on us. Ensign Taro called out, his voice tight with fear. Rail stood at the center of the bridge, his expression calm despite the chaos. Hold steady. They're testing us. Minna appeared at his side, carrying a small metallic case. She placed it on the console, her eyes determined. If this is going to work, Rail, it has to be now. Rail nodded, his voice steady. Patch me through to the fleet. The communications officer hesitated before pressing a button. The holographic display flickered to life, showing Voller's face once more. Behind him, the bridge of his flagship buzzed with activity. His mandibles twitched with barely suppressed rage. You are outnumbered, human, Voller growled. This is your last chance to surrender. Defiance will lead only to your annihilation. Rail smiled faintly, his confidence unshaken. Oh, Voller, you still don't get it, do you? You're not just facing a ship, you're facing humanity. And we're not the ones who should be worried right now. Before Voller could respond, Rail gestured to Minna, who tapped a command into the console. The metallic case opened, revealing a small, glowing device. What is that? Voller demanded, his eyes narrowing. Minna grinned. We call it the diffuser. It's a little something we whipped up in the kitchen. You see, Voller, while you've been busy barking orders, we've been baking. Rail stepped forward, his tone calm but laced with menace. The device you're looking at is emitting a signal. A very particular signal. It's designed to replicate the aroma and chemical profile of our brownies. On a galactic scale. Volar's eyes widened in horror. You wouldn't dare. Oh, we already have. Rail interrupted smoothly. Your fleet is now saturated with the scent. Every member of your crew, every officer on your bridge, is breathing it in as we speak. Tell me, Volar, how long do you think it will take before your soldiers start demanding a taste? Before your command structure collapses under the weight of their cravings? The Krextal commander's mandibles clicked furiously. You underestimate the discipline of my people. We are warriors, not weaklings to be swayed by desserts. Minna chuckled. Funny thing about that, it's not just about the taste, Volar. It's about the chemical reaction. Our brownies are engineered to trigger a unique response in alien physiology. It's not addiction, exactly. It's compulsion. Rail folded his arms, his gaze piercing. The longer you wait, the worse it gets. Your soldiers will start turning on each other. Your allies will question your leadership. And when the council gets wind of this, they'll see just how fragile the mighty Krextal really are. A tense silence filled the bridge. Volar's image flickered, his expression a mix of fury and desperation. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and dangerous. You think you've won? This is a temporary victory at best. The Krextal do not surrender. Rail's smile didn't falter. Then don't surrender. Retreat. Go back to your council and tell them what you faced here today. Tell them about the humans who turned food into a weapon. Tell them what happens when you underestimate us. For a long moment, Volar stared at Rail, his mandibles twitching. Then, without a word, the hologram cut out. Commander, the Krextal fleet is moving, Ensign Taro reported, his voice trembling with disbelief. Rail turned to the viewport, watching as the Krextal ships broke formation and began to retreat. He exhaled slowly, the tension in his shoulders easing. Minna leaned against the console, grinning. Well, I'll be damned. The brownies worked. Rail chuckled, shaking his head. Never underestimate the power of a good recipe. As the bridge erupted into cheers, Rail allowed himself a moment of quiet reflection. This victory wasn't just about survival. It was about sending a message. Humanity might not have the biggest ships or the most advanced weapons, but they had something far more powerful: ingenuity. Back in the galley, Minna slid the tray of brownies onto the counter, smiling to herself. Guess I'd better start working on the next batch. Who knows what the galaxy will throw at us next? Rail's voice echoed from the bridge. Whatever it is, they'd better come hungry.